Hi ladies and gentlemen, back again, Bathrobe Chronicles number 188. And frankly, for most of you, most likely if you've stumbled across this place and you haven't watched any of my other videos, you most likely should just continue on somewhere else, because this most likely won't interest you at all. A couple, 3-4 months ago, I did a 3-part segment, and it was called Alienation in the Workplace. And basically, what I was ranting and raving about, if you will, was where I work. Now, back when I did the other segment, I wasn't specific about my job, and I wasn't specific about the city. I wasn't specific about anything. I just talked in general. Well, not in general. I talked specifically about things that had happened, but I really didn't say where I was or what my job was or anything else. And I'm sure that most of you won't be interested. You know, there might be a handful of you out there who have some interest in this, and that would only be because you and I, you know, have some kind of relationship and we exchange, you know, emails or whatever you call those gizmos, you know, through YouTube. But anyway, recently I quit my job, and I'd been employed with the city of Norfolk, Virginia for over 14 years. And the agency I was employed by is Norfolk Community Services Board. And what I did is I worked in a unit called Emergency Services. Now, in the state of Virginia, if someone is going to be detained, if you will, to a psychiatric hospital against their will, in other words, you are forcing them in there, then someone from an emergency services unit must do the evaluation. Now, all throughout the states, of course, cities and counties and so on and so forth, have emergency services unit. It's what's called a state mandated service. There must be someone available 24 hours a day to do these evaluations. So that's what I did. Excuse me. I worked for the city of Norfolk for over 14 years, 14 and a half years or something like that. And prior to that, I worked for the city of Virginia Beach for about 3.5 years. And this is the only job that I ever had in what you would call mental health. And there's a long story, and I won't bore you with the details about how I ended up doing this. But anyway, I ended up doing it. And basically what the folks in emergency services do is they respond to calls 24 hours a day. The call can come in from a relative, can come in from a school, can come in from a psychiatric facility, can come in from an emergency room, can come in from a police officer, you name it. And what emergency services does is they will see these people and evaluate these people. And if these people need to be, according to the emergency services worker, if they need to be in a psychiatric hospital and they're meeting what's called the criteria to detain someone, then the emergency services worker arranges for a psychiatric bed. They go before a magistrate. They, you know, plead their case, so to speak, and then the magistrate issues what's called a temporary detaining order. And that order basically says to the police officer, the sheriff's department, or whomever, take this person from wherever they are and take them to so-and-so psychiatric hospital. And this is a court order issued by the magistrate. The emergency services worker have no judicial authority. You know, they couldn't write you a ticket. However, they act as advisors to magistrates. Anyway, that's what I've been doing for a long time. And the job is not actually pleasant in the sense of, oh, ha, 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 because basically what you see, in my opinion, obviously, is two kinds of people. You see the seriously mentally ill people. You know, these seriously mentally ill. You see elderly people with dementia. And then you see all the scumbags. Hey, I have to say it. I'm trying to be candid tonight. You know, the drug users who want a place to crash for a while and say, oh, I'm going to kill myself, which of course they aren't. Uh, so basically, it's a job that even though it's unpleasant, there's something about it that a lot of us like. When I say a lot of us, a lot of the people who do this, you know, they like it. They don't want to do anything else but that. And I know when I was hired in the city of Norfolk, which, as I said, was over 14 years ago, back in those days, it was almost impossible to get a job in emergency services. People got hired and they stayed forever. That's not the case now, of course. Okay, where was I? Oh, yeah. Anyway, so that's what I've been doing for quite a while. Now, this agency I worked for, Norfolk Community Services Board, about 6, 8, 10 months ago, and I don't remember exactly when. We have several cities in our area. We have Suffolk, we have Middle Peninsula, I'm not even sure what that is. We have Chesapeake, we have Portsmouth. Now, those agencies, excuse me, they have to provide coverage 24 hours a day, just like this, you know, it's state mandated. However, what their employees do is they in the evening are at home on call. Okay. Now, up until a few months ago, there was a volunteer agency in the city of Norfolk who answered the phones for these agencies after hours. In other words, you know, they would shut down at 5:30 and open up at 8:30 or whatever the time frame was. And when they shut down and close down their main office, then the phones are diverted to this volunteer crisis center. And if a call came in on an emergency, so to speak, then the volunteer agency would answer the phone and look up who's on call, and boom, 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 call the person on call. Then the on-call person would go out and do the evaluation. Okay, they've been doing that for a long time. Now, sadly, the volunteer agency, for whatever reason, went out of business, so to speak. In other words, they'd been around for 20-some years or 30 years, I can't remember. And I think what the problem was is it was supposed to be volunteer, but they were getting fewer and fewer volunteers, so they were having to pay people, and all of a sudden, for whatever reason, the city decided that's it, and they went out of business. Now, the folks at our agency, and I always refer to the supervisors, if you will, as them and they, you know, they're the ones up there, decided that what they would do, they had an opportunity to get a chunk of money. How much it was, I have no idea. And so what they did is they decided that the people in Norfolk, the emergency services workers in Norfolk, who actually were in the office 24 hours a day, would now start answering the phones for these other agencies, the other 4 agencies, you know, in our nearby community, so to speak. Now, here's the question. Did they actually call the workers who were going to be answering these phones, additional duties, of course, and say, gosh, what do you guys think? Here's what we're thinking of doing. We're thinking of answering the phones for the other agencies. This will give us some more income, which will help us, and so on and so forth. Did they do that? Of course not. They didn't do that. By the way, the time when I was working there were 3 supervisors, ostensibly. The one right, you know, who was always around, the one above her, and then the one above her. And they did not even have the common decency, if you will, to come meet with us and say, we're thinking of doing this. What do you think? Do you think you could handle the additional phone calls? Now, at the time, excuse me, that this all happened, there was a minimum of 2 people on the 8 to 4 shift, 2 people on the 4 to 12 shift, and then 1 person on the, or a minimum, of course there had to be 1, on the 12 to 8 shift. And they also had like what they called a bridge shift, which was maybe 12 o'clock to 8 o'clock. So there was some carryover there between the two shifts during the day. But did they come to anyone in the in emergency services and say, do you think you can do this? Number one, can you handle the extra volume of phone calls? And number two, do you have any suggestions how we could make this better or easier or what have you? No, of course not. They did none of that. All they did was said, this is what you're going to do. Now keep in mind, I feel as though you should treat all employees fairly. And whether the employees at the bottom of the heap or the top of the heap, everyone should be treated fairly. Excuse me, dry mouth again. Now, additionally, in order to do this job that I described to you, the emergency services worker, so to speak, today you must at a minimum have a master's degree. And what they're really doing is they're shooting for people who are licensed. Now, a licensed person, they could be a licensed professional counselor or an LCSW, a licensed clinical social worker, or a licensed psychologist. Now, the clinical social worker and the licensed professional counselor, in order to be that and get that, so to speak, that designation, that license, you have to have a bachelor's degree, of course, 4 years, a master's degree, which is a 2-year degree for both of those, the Master of Social Work or the counseling degree. Both of those are 60 hours, and normally you need a couple of years of what's called supervision before you can actually get your license. So these are folks who spent a whole lot of time in school. And not that you should treat those folks differently than the folk who is out there, swabbing the deck in your agency, but it seems like you would give some consideration to someone who spent all that much time in school and getting licenses and all that. Did they do that? Of course not. All they did was said, this is what you're going to do. Period. Anyway, I'm almost running out of time. I'm going to come back. Part 2 is Pat Condell would say, peace, ladies and gentlemen. Peace.